And what a bizarre second half. Remembering Collingwood led by 9 points at half-time. Fremantle kicked the first 3 goals, bursting out of the blocks in the third quarter in the first 6 minutes. Didn't score then in over a quarter as Collingwood added 2-4 to nothing to at one stage in that last term lead 5-9 to 5-2. And then the Dockers have the last 3 scores of the game, all in the last 6 minutes, kicking 2-1 to nothing, and they pinch it by 6 points.
Yeah, well, it was a little bit around efficiency. So you have a look at the numbers. Collingwood still had 61 entries for 5 goals, 9, and Freo 45 for 7-3. But I wrote down McStay, Schultz and Daicos all missed in the start of that last quarter, which probably would have put the game away, particularly with the conditions that came. But then Freo went Amos and Johnson, 2 quick goals, and that just turned the game on its head, and all of a sudden they win by a goal.
Goals win games, don't they? Goals absolutely win games. I love Collingwood's pressure tonight. I thought they were so disappointing in that regard last week. They ramped it up, and we saw how much dominance they had, time in front half and time inside their forward 50, but they just couldn't get rewarded for all their hard work, Campo. And they did. It came off the back of some efficiency and just a couple of plays. I thought Freo late just went quite safe. They were happy to go down the line to contest and embrace that contest. It took a couple of plays late and some high turnovers and one passage through the middle that opened the game up for them and allowed them to kick a couple of goals.
It's funny how history repeats. 4th game in a row the Dockers now have been involved in here at the Adelaide Oval, decided by a kick, and they've won 2 one-kick games here in the space of a week. The Crows last Friday night, Good Friday night, by 2 points, and now tonight, the gather round Friday night, by 6 points. It sets their season up. They go 4-1, and their next 2 games are back in Perth. The Derby against the Eagles, they'll start warm favourites in that one, and then Carlton at Optus Stadium as well. So they could easily be 6-1 before they head to Marvel for a huge Friday night against the Bulldogs.
Well, we spoke to Simon Garlick before the game and how important it is for this group at the moment in the development phase that they're in to win games away and to build that confidence while they're on the road. And they have. They've done it 2 weeks in a row in one of the toughest spots to win games of footy when you're a away team.
I've got to say, those misses you talked about, they were pretty easy misses too, weren't they? And the other thing, Amos's kick at goal from the top of the 50, from about 48 metres out, with the wind and the rain. That was a huge goal.
It sort of got heavier as he was on the run.
And windier too. You could see the rain swirling through the lights.
We better run through the goal kickers quickly. So Jai Amos finished with 2, both in the second half. Isaiah Dudley finished with 2, both in the third quarter. Bolton, Switkowski and Johnson, the other goal kickers, 1 apiece. All singles for the Magpies. McStay, Crisp, Membry, who kicked 1 goal, 2. Anderson on debut and Long. And as you said, Lachie Schultz finishes the night with 3 behinds, a poster in the last quarter, as you said, Campo, which was, 25 out directly in front.
Yep. Well, him and McStay, they were probably the 2. Nick Daicos was a little bit more under pressure and was sort of running at about 45, but a guy of his class, he normally he probably hits that 8 out of 10, but he just goes to show how tight this competition is, number 1, and 2, efficiency in front of goals. Scoreboard pressure is the ultimate pressure, and as I said, if they knock those 2 over, essentially Freo probably find it tough to win from there, but it opened the game up and maybe freed Freo a little bit up to say we need to try and win this game rather than save the game.
People will look at that game and go, not a high-scoring game, but it's still quite entertaining, wasn't it?
It was, absolutely. I mean, the pressure, that was a finals-type game, really, wasn't it? I mean, neither team, 39 and 45 points, is a really strong defensive game, even though the conditions fluctuated during the night in terms of the weather. But I think both teams will walk away pretty happy. I think Craig McRae will walk away with some positives compared to what they served up the week before, and they were a bit disappointed with the way they went about it. They got some cattle back as well, which obviously helped. Penderbury's obviously a nice inclusion, and Nick Daicos obviously helps, with that overlap run, and they missed him the week before. But he won't be overly disappointed, Fly, I wouldn't imagine. They'd still like to win because it does put them in a vulnerable position, but I thought they got back to some of their traits that they did last year to make the finals.
And just on that point about being a bit vulnerable, what about the stakes now next Thursday night? Nick Daicos' 100th game. They're only 1 game ahead of Carlton. It's hard to believe given all the pressure that's been piled on the Blues. Going into next Thursday night, 80,000 plus at the G. Collingwood 2 and 3, Carlton 1 and 4. it's going to be a hell of a game now with those 2 losses in a row for the Pies.
You got Wiedering out and Moore out. I don't know.
DeGoey now out with concussion.
With concussion. So there's a few missing too. So who's going to be able to stand up in a huge game for both footy clubs, as you said? But has there been a better 100 games of football than Nick Daicos?
Yeah, John Coleman's, well, he didn't quite get to 100. He finished on, 98?
Yeah.
His were pretty good.
Very
520. You've heard of John Coleman?
Yeah, I heard John Coleman. I was just thinking,
That's the way you were looking at me.
I was looking like Tony Modra had a good 100 games too. Like he kicked from his second season.
Chris Judd's first
kicked
100,
129 goals in his second season of footy. So,
yeah.
It's different sort of player, but he's been an unbelievable player, Nick. And to reach 100 games already, he'll rack up 300 pretty quickly too.
What about Jackson into the ruck in the second half? What effect did that have on the game, do you think?
Well, I thought he was good, particularly turning that third quarter. I mean, we called it a few times. He was able to get his hand on it and get it at ground level and get some, 3 or 4 centre clearances going that way when they started to score heavily in that third quarter. And then from then, I reckon it was probably an even draw between him and Cameron around the ground. He took a couple of really nice contested marks late in the game, which probably helped as well. But, I still think he probably got the chocolates on the night, if you were comparing, one for one.
It was Freo's backline that I thought stood up amazingly. Like they were under the pump most of the night, and some of the intercept marks in those conditions too, from Ryan and Pearce in particular. I mean, they played outstanding games because Collingwood did. They put them under pressure for a long period of time. That ball was coming in and out, and Freo will look at that. They'll look at how they can try and exit and find a mark themselves from D50 to try and alleviate some of that pressure because they played into Collingwood's hands.
We are happy to take calls for Nick Theodosi, 133 693. Nick might be very happy. He's a big Magpie man. Nick Theodosi, Prestige Cars. 55 years in business. Everybody should own a Prestige car once in a lifetime. Remember, tonight's best caller to receive a Harvey Norman $100 gift card at 10% off selected AEG kitchen appliances and 10-year warranty now at Harvey Norman. We'll get down to the rooms shortly with Meg McDonald. The Magpies forward line, is that still an issue? If you have a look at it, I mean, Membry is their go-to, is their number one target, but he's not reliable, you don't think, for multiple goals every single week. And then you've got Elliott, you've got McStay, who I don't think is reliable as the main target. Do you think they've got an issue there, the Pies?
There you go.
Yeah, I think. I think the loss of Myercheck going to Melbourne obviously hurts him as well because he was one that can still play a little bit taller, even though he's not tall, in terms of centimetres. But he plays a bit taller. He's able to compete on the ball, and he just gives them another option. But now they've gone a little bit smaller. McStay, I think, sort of struggling a little bit in terms of being able to compete and then get at it at ground level. And when you're playing talls, you need to be able to be cat-like at ground level when the ball hits the ground. You see what Tracy's been able to do at ground level, and Voss, he just needs to be able to do that.
Okay, we've got a sample size of the Pies. Where do you have them placed now? It's still early, but are they a contender? Are they kind of mid-table? They're not down the bottom, but where do you have Collingwood placed?
I think they're middle of the pack at the moment. There's still some flaws. I think that around their contest work is nowhere near probably where it needs to be if you're going to contend against the Brisbanes and the Sydneys and those teams, because you've got to win your fair share of the ball, particularly in that part of the game. And then defensively, I think they're always sound. Craig McRae's teams have shown over his tenure that they're very well organised and very hard to score against, and they play the MCG so well. But offensively, they're struggling. So they don't score from clearance at all. They don't generate much score from there. And then their turnover game is probably not where it has been at this point in time. And there's reasons for that, in terms of personnel and the teams that they've played against at the moment as well, like all teams do. But they'll need to fire up, particularly on offense.
If I look at who's going to be in front of them, I'll go Western Bulldogs. Yep. I'll go Freo. Yep. Sydney. Yep. Hawthorn. Yes. Adelaide. Yes. Brisbane. Yes. So they're going to be probably 7th and below for me.
All right, we can get downstairs to the Collingwood rooms. Julian Marcus is down there with Josh Daicos. Jules?
Thanks, Matty. Josh, thanks for speaking to us on 3AW Football. We'll start with the $64,000 question. Where did it go wrong in the final 10 minutes?
Yeah, hard-fought game. Felt like we were in control for a lot of it, but credit to Fremantle. I feel like when they had the opportunities, they made the most of them. We had our ones early in that last quarter, which could have given us a nice little buffer, but unfortunately, just couldn't capitalise on our momentum, and they kicked a few and managed to win. So it's one that definitely hurts. A lot of positive signs for us as a team, but unfortunately, just don't walk away with the 4 points.
What was Craig's debrief to the group just now?
Yeah, pretty much what I just said. Big progress from last week's performance. The effort was there. Thought we controlled parts of the game which we've been dominant in and is our brand. So, we can hold our head high, but we felt like, probably in those big moments, Freo were able to execute, and that's what good teams do in this league. And they end up walking over the win.
Josh, Scott Camporeale up here. You probably nailed it, from us watching the game. You had 61 entries to 45, so you did control the game, particularly going inside forward 50. But did you feel like you just lacked some connection going in there?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, regardless of the conditions, you'd probably want a bigger score than what we kicked for 61 inside 50s. So definitely, some of the ball use going in, and like you said, the connection probably wasn't there tonight. Once again, you probably got to credit Freo's defence. They've been pretty good for years defensively, and it's something that we'll review. Obviously, watching the tape is probably easier, but 61 inside 50s for our score is probably saying we lack a little bit of connection up forward.
And the other one too, Josh, you only kicked 1 point from stoppage. It was a relatively wet night, so you could suggest that the game was going to go into that phase. But you kicked 5-8 from turnover. So once again, does that Freo's defence, or was it just options going inside the forward 50?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at that, I always just like to think of us first, and I think you'd be wanting to score more than 1 point from stoppage. So, that's something that's in our control. And obviously, games, you have some games where you score really well from turnover, some games from centre bounce. So it does vary, but we pride ourselves on being able to score, a few different ways. So, 5-8 hurts. If that's 8-5, we potentially get the win. But that's football. You just got to execute. And once again, Freo with the team that kicks straighter.
Josh, it's Sloane here, mate. Hey, unlucky, mate. As you said, you guys played solid footy all night, but you mentioned last week's performance, and I was the same. I looked at last week, and I thought just defensively, especially around the midfield, just allowed Brisbane to come through far too easily. But the pressure was right back tonight, and for me, that's what Collingwood bring. You bring that sort of level of pressure. That must have been a huge focus coming into this week.
Yeah, it was. I mean, playing Brisbane's always a tough one. They got some really smart footballers, and they run all sorts of patterns, and they can really pull you apart. And last week they obviously succeeded in that. We felt like they were running patterns and getting the ball and kind of pulling us out of whack. So today we were able to tidy up a few of those issues, and which is great. And I felt like tonight it was us at our best, but unfortunately, like we've spoken about, executing is definitely one that we'll work on. But the boys are in good spirits. We know it's a long year, and at the end of the day, I think we're 2-3 right now. So plenty of work to be done.
Quick break. Obviously, plenty of work to be done, but you get no time to rest, no time to probably hang around. Jagoe out, obviously, for next week with concussion, so it becomes a huge game Thursday night against Carlton.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it feels like every game's a big game, especially for us. I feel like we've always got that Thursday night, Friday night slot. So plenty of eyes on us, but we'll miss Geordie. But I thought Gussie Anderson, the debutant, was huge tonight. That third quarter really rallied the boys, and I look forward to watching him play again next week. We'll have the Blues at the G, so have our faithful there, and excited. Like you said, 6-day turnaround, so it doesn't give us too much time to think about it, which is probably a good thing. Get back to training, get back to getting better.
And the extra layer, Josh, as we let you go for next Thursday night, Younger Brothers, 100th game. It's been a pretty special first 99.
It has. It's it's went quick. I think I've played in every single one of those, so it's crazy to think. He's already notched up 100. It's exciting to see his maturity over the years, and just proud of the way he handles being in the spotlight, and he's an amazing teammate, and I'm sure we'll make him feel special on his milestone.
Does he get a Pendle's special bottle of wine?
It might be a bit too early for that.